Now we have the Jeff Jarrett and Chyna match.
Yes.
And why this is so controversial is Jeff Jarrett's contract had expired 2 days before this match.
Right.
And so he had quite the negotiating power because this angle was built for quite a few months. Chyna actually said that the match was originally scheduled for the previous pay-per-view, but Vince Russo thought it'd be a better idea to stretch the angle out and push it to the next pay-per-view. And Russo is gone by this point.
Right.
And also, Russo wants Jarrett in WCW as the new top star in WCW. Jarrett and WWF brass aren't really on the same page about his push. A few months prior, Russo tried to pitch an angle where Jarrett would work with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was the top guy at the time, and Austin didn't want to work with Jarrett. He thought Jarrett was beneath him, and that created a big beef for Jarrett. And I read in the Observer that additionally, Jarrett had signed a contract at 2 years for $350,000 per year, and at some point in the last year, he was, quote, pressured, convinced, whatever, to take a pay cut to a $250,000 base, which is quite a pay cut. Meltzer points out that even though he took the pay cut with business booming, after bonuses, he was probably going to make his $350 base from pay-per-views. Now, and so the way the story was told in the moment was that Jarrett held up Vince McMahon for $250,000 to $500,000 in order to do this match. And for the longest time, that was the narrative, and that Jarrett would never be welcome back in WWE because of it. And that's part of the reason why when WCW went out of business, Jarrett decided to start his own wrestling company because he knew he couldn't go back to WWF because of this. Now, Jeff Jarrett, not too long ago, well, and then eventually came back. Or was there another reason he started TNA? Was that what you were laughing?
No, just a lot of bullshit to unravel, and I'm sure there's truth in there, but and I'm not privy to everything, but neither is anyone else, I guess. But
well, Jarrett on his podcast, he has a great podcast called My World, co-hosted by Conrad Thompson. They actually went through this whole time period,
interesting.
And Jarrett gave his point of view for the story, and it was the first time he spoke about it. He never really discussed it, and when you hear him say it, it honestly makes perfect sense. He was not trying to hold them up for any money. What he was he went to Vince's office, and at the time, the way the pay structure worked was you would get bonuses based on your placement on the card, and how much the house drew. And on top of that, you would get bonuses if you were on pay-per-views based on what the buy rate was. Those bonuses did not come in until 6 months, maybe a year after the pay-per-view had happened. Jarrett is leaving. He's not going to be around in 6 months. And these bonuses, there's no set formula. You can't, it's basically at the whims of whatever McMahon wants to give you as a bonus. So from Jarrett's point of view is his contract was up. He was already being a nice enough person to perform without a contract. He feels he is owed all of this money, all these pay-per-view bonuses for the last 6 months. And he's worried by leaving and going to WCW, he might not get them. And he felt that this was his only leverage to get the money that he felt he was rightfully due. So he went to Vince. He's like, Vince, I have no problem losing to Chyna. I have no problem doing this match. I just want to make sure I get my payment, and it's this much money. And the way he tells it, there wasn't an issue at the end of the night. Vince paid him, told him to go to the box office, and he got a cash payment. I might have this wrong. It might have been a check directly from the pay from the box office, because Vince claimed he had no problem with
it. Dave Hebner's silver briefcase. Had a lot of
I don't quite remember the specifics because it was a few months since I'd listened to this. But this was a big controversy at the time, and there's a few other notes about it that I want to talk about, but I wanted to get your opinion on where I am now. Did you, as the writer, get word from Vince? Oh, Jarrett's trying to stick me up. Did you get any of this?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you exactly. I think that's all reasonable. It's funny because to me, it's just like zero controversy, especially in how wrestling works, and everything he did was completely reasonable. Like, because otherwise, what would you be like? Well, I'm sure the wrestling promoter's going to pay me out fine. What?
Yeah,
what?
let me hound them in 6 months when I'm not even working here.
Yeah. And again, so from my understanding, basically contracts, I'm sure they're all different, but there was a downside guarantee. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of like things, meaning like I sign $250,000 per year. That's my downside guarantee. Next day, I blow my knee out. I can't wrestle all year. I'll get $250,000. Then you get increases based on all kinds of things that are like pay-per-views you're on, successive pay-per-views you're on, merch, sure, box office, and a lot of that stuff, I think through the years was like, yeah, a percentage of the box office. What's the box office? It gets all murky, but generally what you said is correct. I do know for a fact that his contract was up. And from what Vince said, it was all set. We're like, okay, we're going to, it was one of those things where Chyna's going to go over and be the first, I see there wasn't even anything to discuss or to write about it. And Vince said from before the pay-per-view, from the week before, he said, and remember at a production meeting, or even the production meeting for No Mercy, he was like, well, Jeff Jarrett's contract is up, as of last week or whatever, but he's doing the right thing, and and he's going to put Chyna over, because that just goes to show you, what kind of man he is and what kind of integrity he has in this business. I mean, that was his. Whether inside he was like, "God damn it, I don't think so." That's what he said in the open, and that's what he said all along. And when Jeff was around, people were saying goodbyes or whatever. He was very cordial to him. Whether you could say he held him up, I'm sure Vince would do nothing but he'd probably like you better for holding him up than if you said like, yeah, whatever, Vince. Simp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, to me, there's zero controversy, and I'm sure what Jeff Jarrett laid out there was absolutely accurate, because there's not even, there's no controversy. But that's what Vince, said behind the scenes and said at the production meeting. I remember he's doing the right thing, and that it just goes to show you what kind of a man he is.